Good evening. Can everyone hear me? You can simply type yes in the chat if you can. Fantastic. Thank you for that. And second, does everyone see the visual displays of data on PowerPoint title slide? Fantastic. Well, we are well on our way. Thank you for attending this evening's quantitative seminar on the visual displays of data. And I'm Dr. Reggie Taylor. I'm an academic success coordinator in the Office of Research and Doctoral Services. And some of you may have attended some of my previous sessions. By chat there, I mean in the chat, has anyone attended any of my previous sessions? Okay, fantastic. We have a lot of repeat attenders. So pretty much we follow the same format of a slide presentation, and then we're going to get interactive and live in SPSS, to actually enact out some of the things that we are, and a lot of the concepts that we are talking about here. Okay. So what we're going to do here this evening, I have a few housekeeping notes that I wanted to talk about. Then I'm going to talk about easing anxiety. And as many of you remembered from last week's session, if you attended, that my focus and one of my main focuses is to ease your anxiety. We're not going to cover each and every type of visual presentation. We're just going to touch on a lot of the surface of a lot of the concepts. But the idea is that if you leave here with a little less anxiety, you're able to then see this information in front of you again, or see the software in front of you again, and then feel a little bit more comfortable with what you have to do. So easing anxiety, I think that it really eases up a lot of your cognitive energy, and you can focus it on what you're trying to do. So our big test here to see if we ease anxiety by the end of this session, okay? And if you attended last week, you also know that I talk about the scales of measurement often. But before that, I'm going to talk about something called a unit of analysis, a very important concept in research. Okay, then we'll go into revisiting the scales of measurement. Then we'll jump right into the visual displays of data, and specifically looking at it in SPSS. And remember from last week's session, when we talked about the 4 scales of measurement, and that's why I'm going to revisit those, is that a lot of statistical tests, a lot of statistical procedures that you run are all based on the scale of measurement of the data. So that's why it's important, again, to understand scales of measurements, because you can end up running the wrong test or running what you think is a right graphical display, but you have used the wrong data. And ideally, that's not a good combination. So remember, it all goes back to the scales of measurement. And we'll just look at a couple of displays in each type for group data, a pie chart and a bar graph. And then we'll look at some ungrouped data. And we'll look at a histogram and a box plot. Now remember, SPSS has hundreds of types of charts and graphs and figures, etc. But we're just focusing on you understanding, again, easing your anxiety, understanding where the graph commands are and how to produce a basic graph, okay? Then we'll go even a step further and look at an exemplar, an example of perhaps if I was teaching a course and you needed to do something on the visual displays of data, perhaps what I'm going to show you may be very helpful to you in your quantitative journey. Again, I'll point you to the ORG resources, which is our website, where you will be introduced to a host of resources, a schedule of even upcoming sessions. I have a little fun in here, a little knowledge check that I put in here. We'll talk about that. And then I want you to fill out a survey if you feel so inclined to do so after the session, okay? Now, as far as housekeeping, please mute your lines. This session will be recorded. and it will be available hopefully sometime tomorrow, and we'll talk a little bit more about that and where you can go and get that recording. I'm going to be using the SPSS version 29. Some of the things you see may look a little different if you're using a different version, but the general concept and idea is going to be the same. Now, this is not a general statistics seminar, and by that I mean we can't really open this up to any and every type of question under the sun regarding statistics, regarding SPSS. We don't have the time to do that. And again, the attendees here are hoping to come here to get a session on the content of the abstract, which is the visual displays of data. So if you could please keep your questions to that particular topic, we would greatly appreciate that, okay? And again, there'll be an anonymous survey available, and there's a knowledge check available. Now let's talk about the unit of analysis. The unit of analysis is the object about the information that you're going to collect or the information that you're going to analyze. An example of a unit of observation is an individual. For example, let's say you're going to conduct research and your participants are going to be people, and you're going to give them a survey, ask them questions, and they're going to give you your responses. That individual is the unit of observation. But now, units of observation can span beyond just the individual. It can be a family, an organization, a city, etc. So for example, you could be conducting research where you're collecting data at the city level. For example, the city of Tampa, the city of New York, the city of San Diego. But you may be collecting, say, the population data and other things like that. But remember, it's all at that same unit of analysis, and that's going to be very critical and important when you're conducting research. And normally you collect and you analyze that data at the same unit of analysis. And we'll make sure we translate this concept into a better understanding once we get into SPSS, okay? Now, we know we're going to be, say, using individuals in our study, and we know we have to collect data from individuals, or we may be given a data set, and inside that data set is obviously going to contain data, variables, and that information collected for those variables. For example, gender may be a variable, and we need to understand what the scale of measurement is of that particular variable. So we're going to go over this very quickly here because you'll have links to go to the scales of measurement for a more in-depth conversation. But there's basically 4 scales of measurement: the nominal, the ordinal, the interval, and the ratio. And again, depending on the scale of measurement, there's certain things you can and cannot do. For example, we are going to clearly see that if we want to run a certain graph, for example, a pie chart, that the data has to be nominal. So you get the gist, again, just understanding that there is a relationship between the scales of measurement and pretty much any and everything that you would do in SPSS. Okay? Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, fantastic. So remember the scales of measurement. When you start anything in SPSS, and we'll get into that and look at that, any types of analysis or anything, I want you to be very cognizant of the scale of measurement. That's going to be very important, and we'll look at that a little bit more again. Now, the nominal is categorical. There's no numerical value for it. For example, gender. We know that's categorical. It could be male, female, other. It could be something like political affiliation. As you can see, just different classes that the unit of analysis, which is the individual, you're collecting their gender. So person number 1 may be a male, person number 2, a female, et cetera, okay? Now, the next level is called the ordinal, and that's ranking order. You all have probably filled out a survey or answered a questionnaire where they ask you to rank something or rate something on a scale of, say, 1 to 5. That's an ordinal scale of measurement. Now look at the first three letters, ord. That means order. So it's going in some hierarchy of order. So for example, likely, more likely, very likely. So you can see there are increasing increments, okay, in the ranking order. So you have to understand, is this data in here, this variable that I'm looking at, is it a rank order or an ordinal variable? The interval, again, is in order, equal intervals, but there's no true zero. So for example, if you were collecting weather, the temperature is a variable, 25 degrees today, 30 degrees the next day, 0 degrees the next day. Zero in this case does not mean there is no existence of the variable, no existence of weather. It simply means that it's very cold. Then we go to the highest order, which is the ratio, very similar to the interval, but it has a true zero value. Now, again, this is just a recap because, again, you have a very detailed video tutorial here that you can look at that goes in depth with the scales of measurement, okay? So again, this is just a recap of the scales. Now,
I'm sorry, I have a question.
Yes.
On that previous slide. So where the interval and the ratio in SPSS, is that shown as scale?
Yeah, I'm going to get to that when we get into SPSS, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Okay.
Now, so remember we said that when we present data, one of the things we're concerned with is what is the scale of measurement? You're saying, present me a graphical display of this variable. Well, the first thing that we have to understand is what is the scale of measurement of that variable when we're looking into a data set, okay? Now, the first one that we're going to look at is a pie chart. In a pie chart, in this case, we're looking at the source of stress. In other words, someone was asked, where does your stress come from? And as you can see on the right here, the graph or the chart, let me call it pie chart, is actually showing categories. The work category. The spouse or the partner is the source of stress. Relationships, the source of stress. So you can see it's color-coded, and you can see over here the representation. So this blue representation here, we can see clearly the biggest source of stress is work. And that is what a graphical depiction does for you, a pie chart. It shows the parts of a whole and how much each part is taking up of the whole. But again, it's a graphical depiction. In other words, if you were looking at someone's presenting data, they could spell all of this out in several paragraphs. Work was 65% of, the responses. The spouse or partner was another 12%. As you can see, all these numbers, you're trying to read them and make sense of it. It's hard to do. But if you put it into a pie chart, you can clearly see here a good distribution or breakout of the particular variables, okay? You can clearly see that. And you can make a lot of inferences about the data just by looking at that chart. The majority of the people responded which way for the source of stress, if you wouldn't mind. What is the main source of stress here in this particular case? Work. Now, if you got a data set with thousands and thousands of records in it, you're not going to go through each line and say, let me count and see. You can simply just run a pie chart and depict that information in saying that the pie chart shows, the breakout of the source of stress. But notice that each of these variables, okay, each variable represents a category. Does everybody see that? Remember, a nominal variable is a categorical variable. Does everybody see that? Before we move on, I want to make sure, does everybody understand that concept? So we have to select a categorical variable when we go into SPSS to produce a pie chart. Okay. Now, there's some rules to graphs. You can buy actually books completely on graphs. I have a book by the APA on all the rules of graphs and charts and things. But some common things is, use a small amount of groups, not too many groups. Could you imagine 40 groups here? these little pies would just, these slices would be so small, that it probably wouldn't make any sense to us whatsoever. And you really couldn't make any entrance to it. So what is a small amount of group? I don't know. I couldn't tell you a number, but you use your judgment. You look at it. If it looks like it's too crazy and you can't really make sense of the pie chart, then you probably have used the variable with too many groups. And perhaps another source of visual display is appropriate. Okay? So again, scale of measurement is very important. And does everyone understand now again that critical relationship between the scales of measurement and a lot of the processes and procedures that we're going to do in SPSS? Does everyone understand that? Fantastic. Now, let's take a look at exactly how we would do that in SPSS. Now, we're going to look at it still here with a still PowerPoint, but we'll get into SPSS. But you'll see graphs have become very simple to produce in SPSS. Now, I have the version 29 again, so you may see something a little different. If someone has an earlier version, you may see this left area over here look a little different, but not much, okay? So what you would do is from the main SPSS menu, you would simply click on graphs. You're trying to create a graph. You now have a list of all the appropriate graphs here. You simply are going to click the graph that you want. Here we want to produce a pie chart. From that, and again, this is number ordered, 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, again, which is identified over here, okay, to the left. So graphs, pie chart, and then select data in chart area, and let's just put summaries for groups of cases, okay? Now, you hit define. Now, this is where we have to tell SPSS, what variables do I want? This is what you're doing when you define. Right now, remember, we have not seen anything about what variable we're picking. We're just telling SPSS, I want you to produce a graph, and I want it to be a pie chart. And now let me tell you exactly what I want this pie chart to look like. When you hit the define button, what you'll get is an area then where you define. And as you can see right up here, it will tell you define your pie. Here will all your variables will be. You're going to take your variable of concern, in this case.
Hey, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Okay, when I open SPSS, I don't see anything that says pie chart. Where do I go
Again, you
to?
may have a different version. What version of SPSS do you have?
28, which is what Walden.
Yes, and that looks different. Like I said, it's a little bit different, but I will explain to you shortly exactly how you can address that. You
Well,
probably have something.
I cannot follow along with you if I
I'm
cannot.
trying to answer your question. You probably have something that says SPSS graphs, and then it has legacy dialogues. Am I correct?
Nope. Yes, no, way at the bottom. So then what do I do?
Legacy dialogues, click on that. And then what do you see?
Bar 3D.
And that's where
line
you would fill in
area.
at. Okay, remember, versions are going to be different. And this is version 29 that we are depicting here, okay?
Well, I'm
So-
not understanding. I'm not understanding. Please excuse me, because I'm paying a lot of money for this course. I'm not understanding why you are doing a different version than what Walden has given us. All right.
Well, Walden gives you
That
any
makes-
version that you are able to download.
Walden
You can
gives
go
you
into you
28.
can go into your classroom and pull any version you want. I use the latest version.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, but Walden gives you
Well,
28.
ma'am, this is not the purpose of this to complain about that. We are trying to go through a session here, so you can take that
Right,
up
and I'm trying,
with
and
your
I'm
program
trying,
director.
and I'm trying to learn, sir. Okay, I paid $4,000 for this course. I'm paying for your time. I'm paying with my money, and I'm asking. Okay, so I go to graphs, and then what? To pie,
Yes, and then you will follow up from where
and
we're
then
going
what?
here.
And it says open data file. Is that correct?
No.
Yes or no?
No, you
Okay,
have to have
well,
a data file. We're going to get into SPSS. As I mentioned, we're going to go into SPSS. Okay. So that's where we'll see the live version. So if we follow the overview, you'll see we'll get to those areas and hopefully we can address it there. Okay. So now, as you can see,
I'm not real happy with your explanation, sir. You're
well, I'm
getting
very
paid
sorry
a lot
about
of
that,
my
and you can
money.
reach me
You're
by
getting
email
paid
on
a
the
lot of my
contact
money.
information, okay?
Yes, I understand, Jessica, I am. But he's taking my time too, and I don't have this. So please
Well, again, I'm saying,
understand,
man, when you
from my
download
point of
version
view, from my point of
29,
view,
you will
from
be
my
able to
point of
follow
view.
with this specific
Okay,
version,
well, I
okay? I
will be
don't
making
have,
a huge complaint to Walden tomorrow.
okay, so we're going to move on there because I know you all are here for the webinar for the version 29, okay? Now, so when you get to the pie chart, again, you can see you put in the source of stress, which is the variable you're concerned with. Okay, this is where your data will be when you open up your data file. So remember from last week, the nominal variables have that little pie shape there, the little circles. So we know that that's one of the variables that we would want to look at. But when we get into SPSS, we'll look a little deeper. So now what we do is we look and see, and again, you can make some inferences here about the data. The majority were work related. The least amount you can see is probably this red area here, which is the spouse or partner, etc. Another large area here is the green one, which is probably the family. So does everybody understand how the chart now is giving you just a lot of global information? Fantastic. Okay. Now, what we're going to do here is take a look at the second graphical depiction, and then we'll break and go into SPSS, okay? The live version. Now, the next possible one that you can run is a bar graph. I know we've all seen these, the up and down bars. And again, what they do is they emphasize the distribution of a categorical variable. Now, in this case, what we have here is the same source of stress. But look at it now, we're looking at it a different way. And instead of the circles, we're just simply saying it represented in bars, okay? But notice again that each of these is a category, a categorical variable, okay? So does everybody see the same thing, just in a different format? Does that make sense to everyone? Fantastic. Now, again, if I were to look at this, I could quickly see, oh, excuse me, this is not the source of stress. I'm sorry, this is the marital status. So we could quickly see the majority of the individuals were married for the first time. Very quickly, we could see that. Next, single, etc. So again, folks, remember, you're simply just looking at categories of data and you're breaking it out into different and appropriate graphs. So for example, if you had a pie chart and you had too many categories, maybe perhaps a bar graph would look a little better. Does everybody see that? Maybe perhaps a bar graph would look better. So then that's why, you have to look at what depiction and what looks best, what's telling the best story, what fits, etc. And those are the depictions of two of the very basic types of graphical depictions for the nominal data. Now, what we'll do here is let's go ahead and let's take a look. Give me just a second. And let's jump into SPSS now here, okay? I'm gonna share my screen again with you. Give me a second. Find everyone. Okay, now everyone, do you see, give me just a second. See the SPSS data file. Does everyone see an SPSS data file on the screen? Yes, no? Okay, fantastic. Let me put that back up there. Now let's take a look at this file, okay? Just remember, get comfortable with what we're looking at, get an understanding of the menu. So first of all, remember from
Dr.
last
Taylor,
week.
your screen disappeared. It's not there anymore.
Okay, give me a second to get that back up. Okay,
Sorry.
no problem. You just have to share screen. There we go. Just up. What about now?
Yes, it's there now.
Fantastic. Okay. Now let's take a look at this. Let's look at the views. The first view is the variable view that I'm going to look at down here. You see in the bottom right. Now, for example, remember from last week, I said that if you had versions 28 or earlier, you all only have two views, the data view and the variable view. Those of you that have 29, you'll have these three views, okay? So there's going to be different spin outs of the versions. And Walden, when you take the course, has about 10, 15 different versions available for you, depending on if it's a Mac, if it's a PC, depending on what operating system you have. So you select which one you download based on your operational needs, okay? You wouldn't download the Mac one on a PC, vice versa. If you like the latest updates of your software, you may load the latest version of your software. And then, that determines what your software is going to look like, just like Microsoft Word. You download the latest version, it may look a little different than the previous one, but Word is Word and it does the same thing, correct? So, all righty. Well, let's take a look at this. Now, let's first talk about the unit of analysis, okay, that we talked about. In this case, we have rows. Oh, excuse me, I'm in the data file here. I'm going to go to the data view. Now, as you can see, this is data, information, stress scores, something about smoking, something about gender, something about education. You can see that. So these are the variables that are vertical. But when we click on the rows from left here, now when I click on a row, I'm looking at a unit of analysis. I'm looking at a person. So person number 1 had a stress score of 29. Person number 1 was a female. Does everybody see that? Okay, so that's the unit of analysis going in the rows. And every one is the same. This is a person. So in this case, depending on how much data we have, if I scroll down, we have 439 records in this data set. So a sample of 439. Everybody see that? Okay with that? So we're just trying to make sure we get comfortable, remember, and ease that anxiety of looking into a data set, okay? So as I scroll over, you can see we ask information about age, optimism, et cetera, et cetera. Now, there was a question about the scales of measurement. And notice here now, if we look here, we have a measure column. That's the scale of measurement for each variable. So we see that stress is a scale variable. And there was a very good question because you don't see, if we click here, we see scale, ordinal, and nominal. But I told you there were 4. There was nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio. So you say, where are they, Dr. Taylor? Well, the interval and ratio are both represented by the scale. So if you have an interval or ratio, just select scale. So that's interval, ratio, then you have the ordinal and the nominal. Everybody okay with that?
Yes. Is there a way to know the difference between the two from SPSS?
Yeah, right here, this is saying that gender is a nominal variable. It's categorical.
Oh, no,
Now, if
no.
you're meaning the difference in what's
The
the male
scale.
and the female, you go into the values column. And now let's see how the data file is set up. As you can see, it's coded as 1 is males, 2 is females.
I'm so sorry. I mean, when it's scale, if it's interval versus ratio.
Okay, what's the question? It doesn't matter. Really, that represents either or.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, either or. So if you have an interval or a ratio, you're not going to get the option for that. It's going to say scale.
Got it.
And the scale will represent both of those two types of data. Yes. Now, The other thing is that anytime there's a nominal or an ordinal variable, as you can see here, we have to have values assigned to. So we see that the 1 is a male, the 2 is a female. Now remember, these numbers don't mean that we're going to do any mathematics with this. It just labels and let us know that we have males and females, but we have to give a code, a numerical number in SPSS, okay? Now, the other thing I'll show you is another tip, is that if you attended last week, you see up here these little, let me see, I'm gonna go to the data view. Now I'm in the data view. You see we're looking at the actual data. We see this is ordinal. You see the little stair steps. You see marital status. You know it's nominal, but we don't know how it's coded, right? But we know that we have a 1 and a 2 for that. If you use your alphanumeric button, and I click here, you see what happens? You see the codes, how it's coded in the back. You click the alphanumeric again, and it tells you what the narrative is. Does everybody see that? Okay. Now, let's go into now, and let's build a graph. Now, first of all, you have to have a data file open. Just like in Word, you open up Word, you have to open a file. Okay, so I have an open data file here. And now if you look at the introduction, I believe I did a session last week, and it goes into the very basics of SPSS. So again, we're doing some different things here, okay? But here's a file that's open. So remember, from the slides, we saw the graph command, right? And we simply go down and we select the graph. Now in other versions, after you hit graph, you'll see something that says legacy dialogues. And when you click that, then this shows up. It's just one other step and you're going to select your chart. So I'm going to select, we said pie chart, right? So let's, pie right here, okay? Everyone see I'm hitting pie. Now, you'll see, remember, we just did the summaries for the groups of cases in the define area. Let me define it. So nothing's in here. We want a nominal variable. Am I correct? We know that we look for the little 3 dots there, or circles, or whatever you want to call it, etc. But we're going to look at the highest education, and we can use that too because that's an ordinal variable, but it's categorical also. What category of education do you fall in? Okay, so we're going to take the highest education, and I'm going to move this out of here. I'm going to take the highest education, and you want to define your slices by. And remember, I'm going to do percent of cases here. And it's very simple. You hit the OK button, and then what happens is you get your SPSS output. Does everybody see that? There it is, your graph. Okay? Now, as you can see, you can start making inferences. Remember, there's 430-something records in this data file. But now, quickly, I can tell you that probably the majority of the individuals were in this dark green area here, I'd say, which is completed undergraduate. Does everybody see that? You see how the pie chart is breaking out pieces of a whole. So in this case, you had a primary group, a secondary, some completed high school, some additional training, undergraduate and postgraduate. That is the process of a pie chart. Let's do that once again, okay? Again, what we did was analyze, graphs. We're going to select the one that we want, pi. We know that we're going to use the summaries for the groups. We're going to define the groups. Let's put another variable in there, okay? Let's take the highest education out. And let's take the marital status, click that, and put in define slices. So now we're going to look at the marital breakout. Does everybody see that? Very simple. The majority were what? Married the first time in the purple group. And that's because we see the married first time over here. That's a very simple pie chart. So if you open up a data set where you have to do this, look for a nominal or an interval variable, and then that's the appropriate variable, okay? Now let's take a look at the second one, which was the bar chart. Again, graphs. There's the bar right there. Okay. And in the PowerPoint, you'll see that it will say we're going to do a simple bar chart. The summaries again for the groups of the cases, and we have to define it. Let's look at the marital status again. Remember, if there was no variables here, it would all come up blank. In your data set, you would click on the variable and bring it over. Instead of the number of cases, let's just look at the percent. We hit OK. And now let's look at our marital status. See that? About 40% married the first time. See that? A little bit less than 2 or 3% are widowed. Again, it's a simple depiction of nominal or categorical data. Is everybody okay with that? And again, remember, using the PowerPoint presentation, you can follow along when you get into SPSS. And remember, some people may have versions 26, 27, 28, 29. Just simply click on the help in SPSS and just figure out what do I click on to get to graphs. But it's going to start up in the very beginning at graphs. And you may see different layouts again, even like in the bottom here where we were looking at the views. You have different views in SPSS depending, again, on your version. You see overview. I'm going to click on this overview. You don't have this overview if you have version 28. This doesn't exist. But again, you don't need it, okay? Now, let's go back to the PowerPoint, okay?
Dr. Taylor, quick question.
Sure thing.
Is it possible to do multiple variables?
Yes,
in one
yes,
variable?
it is. And you start getting into, more advanced charts, but yeah, but you can put in multiple variables into the bar graphs. And that's the beauty, start looking at things and seeing what you need, what's the best way to depict that, etc. Because, you could actually do this marital status, and you could say, I want to break it out by males. And then also by females. You see what I'm saying? And you could have, the 2 by sides, and one is males and females. So yes, it's a host of things you can do. And that's the beauty of it. It can really help you display your data in a lot of different ways. We just want to get the basics here to make sure, we understand. But the beauty is that you start playing with them and you can get, a lot of things out of the graphs. But yes, you can, multiple. But again, that would be here in the, well, we'll get back to that if we have some time. But yes, you can. Okay? Everybody good? Okay, now, we said that we had, and again, remember, just follow these graphs, bar, et cetera, et cetera. Now, but suppose you want to run your data for a continuous variable. And now by continuous, again, I don't want to confuse you, but those are the scale variables, the interval, the interval or the ratio. Okay? The interval or the ratio. So as you can see, it all goes back to, like we said, the scales of measurement. So now let's take a look at that. We are all familiar with the histogram, aren't we? We all first learned statistics. They tell us about the normal bell curve and look at the histogram. But we have to do that for a numerical variable, a scale variable. And you see, you have your y-axis, which is the frequency. How many occurrences of something? How many occurrences for total perceived stress? Okay, which is the x-axis. And you can look and see just from this here looks to have a good normal curve almost. The data is mostly fitting in there, with the exception up at the top here, you can see there appears to be a couple of outliers. Does everybody see that? But you see now how you've taken 499 records or whatever the case may be and can immediately see, do I have a normal distribution here or what? Some initial looks at lots and lots of data through graphical depictions. Okay? Now in this case, it looks normal. You have a few outliers, but again, you're starting to get that initial investigation and that initial look into the data with graphical depictions. Now, how do we do that? Once again, same thing. graphs, histogram. Over here, you will put the variable in. And remember, you see the little scale, the little ruler. So that means that's a scale variable, okay? A scale variable. And we're going to put total perceived stress. Now, one of the things you can do to get that normal curve there, or that bell curve, it won't show up automatically. Make sure you click on item number 4 here, which just says display normal curve. Okay? And that'll give you that with the curve, then you can get a better look at how it fits inside there. Of course, hit 5, hit OK, and what you end up with, is your histogram. Okay? Let's go now into SPSS and let's run a histogram, okay? So now I'm going to go again into graphs. There it is, histogram. The total perceived stress variable is here. If I didn't want that, I select another one. Let me take an optimism score. Again, it's scale, and I want that variable. Remember, display normal curve. I'm going to turn that off and hit OK. So you can see that we get a graph. You see that? Not a normal curve. I mean, not a bell curve there. You see, you don't see the histogram. But let's run that again. And let's turn the normal curve on. And now you can clearly see how the data fits into the normal curve here. You see we have some outliers kind of skewed over here. But again, you can start seeing some indications of what the data looks like. Does that make sense to everyone? And those are two basic, it's a basic display here with the histogram, okay? Now, the other thing that I wanted to do for you, again, as many of you know that I started doing these a couple of terms ago, just to assist you. Again, these are not required. And again, it's just me, providing an extra resource, when I'm available and can find the time. And you know that I give you exemplars, examples of perhaps what an application assignment could look like, okay? Are there anyone here, and you can just type for me in the chat there, that's actually perhaps taking one of our quantitative courses, say, the 8210 or something, one of the first ones where you may be running something like that, or doing that in the upcoming week? Yes. Okay. Fantastic. Well, what could it look like? What I'm going to do now is show you something that I put together for you. Give me just a second here. An exemplar that I'm going to put in the chat for you also with the presentation. Okay? Now, I've taught these courses for many years. I don't teach them anymore, but this is what I would have put into the classroom, say, for an application when you are going to do visual displays of data in an exemplar. Now let's take a look at this. I'm going to make this very big, so hopefully you can see. Well, I don't want 2 pages. Let me get one. Okay. And you'll get this. And what this is going to be, perhaps what I would tell you to submit to me, if you were doing an application assignment where we had to display data, et cetera, okay? Now, and I'm just going to scroll through it first. You can see it's only 2 pages long, and you can see there are the 2 graphs in there. Does everybody see that, okay? Now let's take a look at this. Now in the application, I'm just saying something opening up about the visual display of data visualization, blah, 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 and I cite that. And using elements such as charts, graphs, et cetera, I'm just putting some information to show that I have knowledge of data visualization. And then I'm providing a couple of citations. Everybody see that, okay? Then I move on and tell you what the purpose of what I'm getting ready to do. And for, say, perhaps an application, you have to present a visual display for a nominal variable and one for a continuous variable, right? Also, we have to discuss the unit of analysis. The individual was chosen as that unit of analysis. And then I just talk a little bit about to show my knowledge of the unit of analysis. You see that? Now I jump right into what I did, a pie chart. Figure 1 was produced for the source of stress variable. And again, why? As it was measured on a nominal scale comprising 9 categories. And then again, I give a little knowledge of a nominal variable, often regarded as the most basic measurement form. You see what I'm doing here? I'm showing now knowledge of my readings, and then I'm doing the application. Then I'll tell you that the pie chart indicates most respondents, and you can see right here, over 50% identified work, blah, blah, blah. And at the same time,
Is that made available? So that
yeah, you're
example?
gonna get this. You're gonna get this in the chat when
Perfect.
we're done. Can you hear me?
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, you're gonna get this and the presentation in the chat. Now, then I had to do a second one, right? So I did a histogram, was produced for the total stress variable. Why? It was a ratio. You see, you're displaying your knowledge that I have to select a graph based on a scale of measurement. Simple as that. That's all I want to know that you know. Then I give a little knowledge of what the ratio scale of measurement is. And then I've given you some additional readings to go to for these scales, okay? It's additional readings. You can cite and use these. Then I report some descriptive statistics. The total perceived score was 22.67 with the standard deviation. And then I talk about the histogram again. The histogram, apart from a few outliers, suggests normality. See that? Does this sound kind of something like what you have to do this week if you're doing if you're in the research course? Bingo. So you
Yep.
see where I'm trying to get you at with these seminars at night? We do some concepts, we look at it still, we go into SPSS, look at it live, and then we say this is what it can look like. Okay? So now, while we are still thinking about it, I want everyone to check it, look into the chat right now, and give me just a second. You should see that that exemplar is going to be placed into the chat. Okay, I want to make sure you see that. Does everybody see the exemplar? And make sure you get that out of the classroom before we close out. Okay? And I'll leave the class open a little bit, when we're done so that you can get that. Now, that's what you have to do, pretty much. And you can see we have pretty much hit most of the main areas where we have talked about, our unit of analysis. We know what the unit of analysis is. We provided a little citation or reference, 1 or 2 of them. And then we talked about in one paragraph what we did for the one variable. And then in another paragraph, just a good outline to let us know what we did. Don't mix and match all that in there. And then I did a histogram for the second one, or I did a bar chart for this one, whatever the case may be. And then just a brief explanation of what the output told you, and then you say figure 1, figure 2. And of course, those are represented right here in your paper. Does that make sense to everybody is what I'm trying to make sure. Is this making sense? Okay. Fantastic. And that's, the graphical display. Now, again, if I were to, give me a second here, were to go back into SPSS again, as you can see, you have a choice of all kinds of graphs. And some of these I've never used, like line graphs, area graphs, high-low, box plots, etc. All types of scatter plots, when we're looking at relationships between 2 variables. And you will be becoming familiar with these throughout the term because some of these you'll be running, and presenting with your applications for certain tests. So these seminars will start tying together and everything should start making sense. It's kind of like a stepping stone process, okay? So these exemplars will come, kind of saying, okay, after all we did and explained and talked about, what is the output product, which we all want to know. What is the output product? What must I produce? What should it look like, okay? And that's where we're trying to help out there with that. Now, let me go here. Is it advisable to add percentages? Yes, you can. Remember, when you're making the graphs, you're going to be asked, do you want frequency? Do you want percentages? Depending on what graph you're making, okay? And so you make that selection. So for example, if we go to graphs, and I believe I went to pi, and summaries for groups of cases defined. You see up here the number of cases or the percents of cases, Jeremiah? Do you see where I'm at there? You select which one you want, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. Mhm.
Thank you.
Yep, you select which one you want.
Sir, can you teach us how to copy it into a Word
Sure
document?
thing, sure thing. Now I have an output, and this is just pretty much, again, now there's a million ways to do this. I have a Mac computer. I have my mouse set up a certain way, but again, all you're going to do that you can do is, let me just get out of this. Here's an object here, graph, okay? And you see I'm clicked on that graph, and you know what you have highlighted when you see the little red dot there, okay? And I'm just simply copy, cut, or either copy, you know, depending on your computer. So I'm going to copy now in a Word document. I'm going to just open up a new one here. So again, this is just basic Windows functions here, depending on how you cut and paste. And there it is. You see that? So again, in SPSS, you just simply, I'm going to go up here. I'll get the pie chart. I'm in the pie chart. I'm in my copy command. And I go into my Word document. And then I go into my paste command. See that?
Thank you very much, sir.
So it's a basic Windows. So you go from one software to another, copy and paste, depending on which way you do that in your, you know, with your software computer.
What's the difference between copy and copy as? I saw you had two different options.
Well, copy, again, this is not I'm not a Windows and a Microsoft DOS expert, but you can copy as probably in different file extensions. Let's take a look. Okay, let's see. I'm not sure, but but again, you guys play with this. And again, these types of questions. Click on these things and do that and see what happens. You know, so I'm right clicking. I'm going to copy as and see I get to choose an image or Microsoft Office graphics object, whatever that may be. But there's nothing wrong with just clicking on these things and seeing what happens.
Okay, yep, thank
Okay.
you.
Now I can even, for example, modify the output. So for example, let me launch the wizard. I don't like the way, let me do it this way here. I'm going to double click in this graph. And you see what happens, how this pops up? And all of these options now, I'm even doing things in the graph here. I can change the font sizes and move colors of things around and do all these things. For example, I can move, you know, I can do things inside of here. So again, that's, you know, the more advanced parts of SPSS where we can edit this chart. And as you can see, there's a host of things in here that you can do. You can see I can bold the font. I can italicize the font. I can do a host of things that I, you know, that I would want to do to really fine tune the output the way that you want it to look, if that makes sense. Okay. So again, remember, this is just an introduction to some very basic graphical procedures, but yes, the sky is the limit with what you can possibly do, you know, with the graphs. Okay. Now, let's get back to the presentation as we're coming up on the hour here. The other things that I wanted to show you were, again, some resources that you can use and go to, okay? Now, this is the Office of Research and Doctoral Services website, and this is where I work. And I'm going to take this link, and I'm going to copy it. And when you go out to that link, what you'll see, as you can see here, is tonight we did the visual display of data, and this is where you could register. Tomorrow, this upcoming seminar for the visual display of data will show up down here in the on-demand quantitative seminar recordings, okay? As everyone's familiar with. And what we are doing here live, and you'll see that that will be in the recording, okay? A lot of these older ones are with older versions of SPSS. So for example, let's see. Yeah, a lot of these actually are pretty much with older versions. And so you'll see a little differences in the, menu commands, but nothing drastic and nothing that you can't figure out, just by clicking on a button. Oh, I see an extra step here. Oh, now I see where I make this selection, that selection, etc. Again, just basic software in different versions, okay? So, and then if you're interested, and again, I think aligned with week 3, we have the descriptive statistics seminar, and we'll talk about how to run descriptive statistics. But remember, again, there's certain things you do for nominal data, and there are certain descriptive statistics you do for continuous data. So you all see it all goes back to the scales of measurement and understanding that very critical concept. And if you do that, you are well on your way to not being demystified and confused by a lot of quantitative and statistical concepts, because it's starting to make sense. And you'll see sometimes output will make no sense if you, select the wrong scale of measurement, etc. Now then, statistical significance, what truly is it? Effect size and confidence intervals. Again, March 12th, next Tuesday. Register, please. And again, all of these will eventually end up down here in the quantitative recordings. And this list here of the upcoming ones will continue to be updated. Does that make sense to everybody? Remember? Okay. Now, the next slide, again, if you want to take a chance and have a little fun, here is a little knowledge check that I put together. And we can just play with it. But again, if you click on this link, okay, and I'm going to build this a little bit more, but this is just some fun tools. And go out here, you'll see that I put together just a little questionnaire and just test your little knowledge. The nominal variable is used to create blah, 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 whatever, and play around with that, okay? Just about 5 or 6 questions. And then finally, what we have is the survey. Your opinion matters, okay? Go out to this link, and this is where you will have a survey. And again, remember, this is the survey that I use to build these quantitative seminars for you, okay? These are not a part of your official program. It is nowhere in your program of study. These are seminars that I choose to put on in the evenings on my own to help accompany you through your research courses, okay? So your opinion matters, okay? I'm not responsible for what technology Walden gives us and doesn't give us, etc. I teach the latest software versions, okay? But other versions are available. Now, to even be a little bit more assistance, when you go out here to our ORD's website, because a lot of times, let me make sure that everyone kind of understands that a lot of the SPSS support installing and registering versions 28, 29, etc. So Walden gives you all of these versions, not just one. You pick and choose the one that you want to use. And again, that aligns with your PC or your Mac. And then there's a specific, for example, I use a Mac. And if I click here, these are specific instructions for each particular, combination of software, etc. So that's why it differs. So if you have an earlier version of SPSS, don't panic, okay? You don't have to upload a new version. Again, just make sure that your version aligns, and you have a Mac, you download the Mac version. If you have version 28, you make sure you download the version 28 of SPSS. And of course, there'll be some minor differences, but overall, Walden gives you options. You pick and choose which SPSS version is appropriate for you and the one that you want to use, okay? Because, for example, this version 29 is very, very resource extensive. It slows your computer down. I actually had to go and buy a new computer to really run version 29. So again, you don't go out and buy a new computer. You don't have to. Perhaps just put version 28 or something on there, etc. You guys get the gist of that. So other than that, let me get back to the PowerPoint, and we'll close out with quick. So, excuse me. That meant time was up, but we'll go on a little longer. So anyway, we did some housekeeping, and remember, the main thing in the housekeeping side is that the recording will be available here sometime tomorrow. Now, the big question in the chat: did we ease anxiety?
Yes.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay, by 100%. That's great. And that's all we're trying to do here is ease your anxiety, and you feel a little bit comfortable when you see something put in front of you. Hey, run this graph, run that, or give me an example of a graph of nominal data, continuous data. None of these concepts are foreign to you. You understand what someone means by nominal. You understand what someone means by continuous, et cetera, et cetera. And now you're really starting to build that good, strong foundation, and you'll see just how much easier, trust me, these other statistical concepts and procedures that you're going to run later on in your quantitative journey, you'll see just how much easier, how much you understand that as we really hone in on these very foundational concepts to move forward, okay? So, and then we talked about, again, the unit of analysis. Remember, is that person, if we're using an individual, a city, or a state, or whatever, a hospital. Very important, those scales of measurement. And remember, we did 4 graphs here: pie, bar for nominal, histogram, box plot for continuous, and you have an exemplar that should be very helpful for you. And let's not leave until I put the presentation in the chat also, okay? And then, you go to the ORG's website where you see all of the upcoming seminars, etc. So give me a second now. I'm in the chat, and I'm going to find the PowerPoint, okay? And now please check in the bottom of the chat, and the visual displays PowerPoint should be there. Do you see that? Fantastic. Okay, I have 8:03, just a little bit past time there. And I really like to keep, that's why I stay on focus and try to keep within the allotted time. So I'm going to keep the classroom open for just a few minutes. So if anyone still needs to grab, the visual display of data PowerPoint or the exemplar out of the chat, okay? Or you'll have a few questions between yourself. Again, I thank you for your time and attention. You keep doing the surveys, letting me know we need this. I'll keep doing them, okay? So anyway, I thank you for your time and attention. I'm going to go have some dinner, and good luck with this week's application. And I'd be very happy to let me know how you did, with that. So shoot me an email or let me know how things went. If you attend next week's session, let's just stay in touch and know what we need to do and how we need to get you through this process, okay? So fantastic, my friends, and I'll see you, I believe, next week, Wednesday or Monday or Wednesday. But anyway, keep an eye out for those upcoming sessions. And if you do, I'll guarantee you, your quantitative experience will be the smoothest that you've had, and you won't have those nightmares and horror stories of individuals that took statistics. Not here at Walden, okay? So thank you very much, and stop smiling so much, Dainty, there. I see you are so happy. But this is what we like. Have you ever had a statistics seminar where you smile like this? No, you're normally crying, in despair, in disgust, and you leave more confused than when you started. That's not what we want here. We want exactly that beautiful smile that you have just given us, okay? So my friends, please take care, and keep the classroom open for you. And the survey link will be in the PowerPoint presentation, okay? So go to the slide, and you'll be able to get that in the PowerPoint presentation, okay? So take care until we meet again. Have a great evening.